Welcome back, everybody, to another episode on Misfit TV. This is the Buckets Only podcast. I am your host, Jay, and this is my friend, Jake. Jake, how are you doing today, my man?
We're doing good. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. We are coming off a weekend, the first weekend of official basketball hoops. I mean, like official, not the scrimmaging, not the cool one-on-ones. We're seeing games that count now. So with that being the case, we have to start with your team, the Los Angeles Clippers. We saw them on what I guess you could call the NBA bubble opening day against the Lakers. Fall short by 2 points, but I think some question whether or not the loss really hits them pretty hard, considering where they are in the standings, the amount of people that didn't play in the game. With all that taken in consideration, also taking into the fact that they just had a very big win with a historical shooting night from 3 against the Pelicans. How do you feel about the Clippers championship aspiration situation right now?
I mean, my biased perspective is that I think we got the tools to win it all, man. I mean, if you look at the roster from top to bottom, you just got bona fide scorers. You got Paul George, who, by the way, has been lighting it up since he got to Orlando. He's been underrated all season, in my opinion. Yeah, he didn't deserve to be an all-star, but he got a lot of hate for still averaging like 25 a game. But I think he's really starting to put the league on notice, especially after putting up like 28 in both the games or something like that. So you got him. You have Lou Williams, who has yet to play a game in Orlando. He had to leave and then quarantine for 10 days. I mean, I don't know how much I need to say about him. You all should already know what his deal is. Um, and then you got, so I don't know. I mean, it depends on whether Montrezl Harrell can return. He's been posting on his Instagram stories that he lost his grandmother recently, and so he was really close with her. He's struggled with mental illnesses over the past years, and like he's fighting depression and stuff, so it's hit him hard. But he said he's going to be back soon, and if he is, the Clippers have a full roster. They're all healthy. Um, and I think you saw their capabilities against the Pelicans and even with the Lakers. Yeah, we lost by 2, but we were missing the best bench duo in the league.
Yeah, and well, first off, condolences to Montrezl Harrell, obviously. But on top of that, I think a way to bounce off of the best duo in the league off the bench comment. Maybe I'm in the minority about this. I've had this conversation with other people off camera, but my belief personally is that AD doesn't get 30 plus if Montrezl Harrell plays that game. He kind of abused Zubac a little bit, who is kind of more of an offensive threat as it is in terms of their team identity. He's kind of that big that gets buckets. It seems like it's Harrell just because he averages nearly 20 points off the bench, but that's not his overall skill set. He just mainly gets a lot of dump offs, a lot of lobs, and a lot of putback. He's a very effort-oriented player. When it comes to Lou Williams, I mean, let's be real about it. When it comes to the Lakers, they're thin in the backcourt. I think even in that game, it was kind of shown. J.R. Smith has 0 points right now in terms of the NBA restart. Danny Green is not giving them really any buckets at all. It took Dion Waiters to get just over 10 to combine with Kuzma to get for them to combine for a little bit over 20 points in that game. LeBron James had 15 points in the game, which I think totally gets swept under the rug just because he hit a putback layup that, mind you, he's the one who missed the shot before it was taken. The whole game, I was underwhelmed, honestly. This is a team that played at, can I say half strength? If not worse than that. Patrick Beverly was like listed as indefinite going into that game and only played 15 minutes in that game. I mean, they played it like kind of with both hands behind their back and kept it within 2 and really still could have won the game. When
And
it
I
comes to
think
the Clippers, they scare me, dude.
people overlook the injuries too much. Guys have had all this time to recover. There's no real injuries on the team. It's guys in quarantine or guys getting back into shape, which is why Lou, Montrez, and Patrick like didn't get the minutes they should originally, or like they should usually get in a game against the Lakers. Um, but on top of that, like it took the Lakers, Anthony Davis and LeBron both playing over 35 minutes, whereas I think Paul George and Kawhi each barely hit 30, if that.
I mean,
And
they combined for like almost 60 points on top of that. I mean,
yeah,
on the night they had 58 points combined. I mean, and of course, like you said before, when it comes to Paul George, shooting out of his mind. Like, I don't
oh,
know
he
what
went
they
like
put.
8 of 11.
I don't know what they put in the water out there, but he has had way too many sips of it because he is stroking it from downtown, and he was coming up clutch with that big three that tied it at 101. So you can show he's ready.
It's I think we touched on this. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but shooters are gonna shoot in
Facts.
Orlando. I forgot. I mean, not I don't want to bring it up all over again, but they said the shooters are gonna be going nuts because there's no fans, so their depth perception of just being right there with nothing around them, they're gonna be hitting all their shots. It's almost like it's kind of like why guys hit all the shots during practice and then it doesn't translate as much when they get to the game. A lot of it is nerve, but it's also because of their perception of the rim and stuff like that. And I think you're seeing that even with guys like TJ Warren. Like
Got
TJ Warren dropped
buckets.
53. He's not he's not a guy who I would sign to put up 53. I'm just putting that out there. But he went like 9 of 12 from deep in that game against the Sixers. So you're seeing a lot of shooters, and that really benefits a team like the Clippers, who you said set a franchise record with 25 3-pointers against the Pelicans.
Too short of a league record too.
Yeah.
League record is 27. I think, let's bounce off of that segue of the Pelicans and just move right into them and address the elephant in the room. Quite literally, considering the size of this man, Zion Williamson got 15 minutes in the game against Utah, a game that was manageable, a game that the Pelicans led for about 2.5 quarters, basically all the way up until the 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Zion did not play the last 3 minutes of the game when the game essentially got blown. He did not play that much against your Clippers when they got blown out. Let's address the elephant in the room. Is New Orleans tanking the playoff push?
I don't see what the other option for them is. Like, I think that if they wanted to win games, if they wanted to make a playoff push, they could have. I understand, like, Zion left the bubble, and I don't know if it's his knee or whether it's the out of shape part that's keeping him at a 15 minutes per game limit. But I don't know if it's time to be worried yet if I'm the Pelicans, but clearly they see something in Zion that no one else, like that the media isn't seeing, the fans aren't seeing, because they practice with him every day. He's with their trainers, so clearly they see something that we don't. And I think they're probably starting to get a little concerned if they are in the midst of this playoff push and they've lost 2 games, one of which they could have won if they had just played Zion for 3 more minutes to get him up to 18, which isn't even half of a game. So I don't know, man. I think there's something fishy in the waters up down there in New Orleans, and I don't know quite what it is yet. But I'm interested to see over the next couple of weeks whether they go full tank mode and barely play Zion, or if they still think they can somehow make a push despite going 0-2 so far.
I mean, honestly, to piggyback off of that, I have to just pull out the commander hat and say they are tanking. I mean, it's the only thing I can think of. I mean, genuinely speaking, I mean, the guy dropped 13 points in 15 minutes in that game. You're talking about a dude who scores a point for every minute he's in the game. I mean, there's not a possession where you're not in fear of him potentially, putting the ball in the hoop. I think the thing with them that throws me off the most is that they're a well-balanced team of young talent that could probably have a splash here or there in the playoffs, like how Brandon Ingram kind of erupted for his 23 in that game. And then you have guys like JJ Redick and Drew Holiday, who from the guard position can score the ball. I mean, you talk about shooters going to shoot out here. I mean, I haven't seen JJ, light anything up so far. I think the most he scored out of the 2 games, I think, was 20 points. But I wouldn't say that he's kind of set the world on fire from 3 yet. And I feel like we're kind of just waiting for when he does. And Drew Holiday is hands down the most underrated player in the league. And I don't even think that's debatable. I mean, that could be for a separate topic in the offseason, but genuinely, I feel like he's one of the players that a lot of players point to as being a guy that is super skilled and does not get that kind of recognition. They have guys on the team who can hoop. And so the fact that they're so willing, and I felt like they did this during the regular season before the hiatus as well, is you saw games where they took Zion Williamson's health or lack thereof, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, so into consideration that they threw games. I mean, it's hard to, question somebody's competitiveness, but I think you can say they threw the Utah game. I think you can say that they were mentally demoralized after the Utah game to the point that the Clippers shooting that many threes and hitting that many threes almost should not have shocked you as much as it probably did most of us for them to be able to hit as many as they did. I mean, I think the big thing when you look at the Pelicans right now is they assume that they are not there yet, and the whole league is wondering why not. And
That
I mean,
yeah,
that's scary. It's scary.
it's it's this time could be a time, and it should be a time where you say, all right, we're going to put our young guys out there. We are going to get them to gel. We're going to get them to really build up chemistry with one another. If we don't make the playoffs this year, fine. They're like the 10th seed right now, or maybe even the 11th seed, I think. And so if you don't make a playoff, if you don't make the playoffs, fine. But this is crucial time. Like, they've kind of accepted the fact that they are a team of the future, and maybe rightfully so. I mean, they are. It's looking like they're going to offer Brandon Ingram a max. He has no reason to turn it down to be able to play with Zion and that young squad. And then you mix in guys like JJ Redick and like Josh Hart and stuff like that over the next couple of years. So he has no reason to decline it. So yeah, I think that they are definitely going to be championship contenders within the next couple of years. I just don't see the thought process behind not putting the effort there. Like, usually, like, even after the first quarter, it was only after the first quarter. Yeah, they were down by like 15 to the Clippers, but they're like, they weren't even playing, or they were playing bad, but they weren't showing effort. Like, you had guys
Agreed.
like walking down the court on offense, like not even jogging. Like, you could tell that they were a team that did not look like they wanted to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a weird season to say this, but you're in weird company when people are wondering whether or not the Suns are going to pass you completely when it comes to this run for the 8th seed. I mean, you have the hype train on Instagram and Twitter that says Ayton going 4 for 5 from 3 so far in the bubble is making them dangerous. Guys like D-Book dropping numbers. The fact that Cam Johnson, who everybody thought was taken way too high when he was drafted this year, just got his first double-double with 19 points. I mean, they're a team that looks scary, and somehow I have to look at their roster and look at the Pelicans roster and still wonder, how are the Pelicans not playing up to the level of the Suns, who just beat the Dallas Mavericks, who are one of the teams that we said earlier on in this podcast a couple episodes ago could be one of the sneaky dark horse teams that upset somebody in the first round. And they just took them out. And I wouldn't say it was with ease. It was a close game. They lost by 2. But what gets taken into consideration is the fact that that's a young team nobody's been talking about all year. Ayton's suspension at the end of at the beginning of the season probably made their year, in terms of their season trajectory, a lot different than what it probably could have been. And somehow I still see more promise in the Suns. Like, it's not something that in 2020, when you see that Zion Williamson is on the team, a former second overall pick and Brandon Ingram is on the team, a former second overall pick and Lonzo Ball is on the team, a veteran that has never missed the playoffs ever in JJ Redick is on the team. It's just, hey man, listen, I'm not saying championship or bust is anything crazy when it comes to the next couple of years for the Pelicans, but they have another AD situation on their hands if they don't get this whole thing figured out. Maybe I'm reaching, but personally, I think they're setting themselves up for something really bad if they don't get it together.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. It's like you it's good that it's good that they have young players that they can develop and that are showing a lot of potential, but you still got to develop them. You can't just sit back and relax and say, "Yeah, we're not going to try this year. We're not going to do anything in the bubble. So what's the point in playing and putting in effort?" Like you still got to put in the work to develop it. It's the NBA is not a league, especially with the amount of top-heavy talent that we see with teams like the Bucks, the Lakers, the Clippers, all these dynamic duos in the league. It's not a time where you can sit back and say, we'll just kind of let them develop. They'll be fine. Like just give us some time and poof, it's going to be a championship team. You got to put in the work to develop them. And right now we're just not seeing that from them at all. And yeah, maybe Zion's not playing as much because of his knee or something, but like he's been rehabbing it pretty much all year to the point where before the bubble, he played like a third of their games because he sat out like a ton. And I just don't see why they're not putting in any effort to get wins.
I honestly have no clue. And it's kind of upsetting, honestly, because the race between, I feel like we left a lot of teams out, not us specifically, but I would say a lot of the media left a lot of teams out to dry when it came to this whole playoff race thing and kind of just saw it as, please, Lord, let Zion in. And
Exactly.
it's kind of unfortunate, what I mean, because they kind of blew the chance at what the media was looking for. And granted, the media doesn't dictate anything, but it's been hyped up the whole time. It seems like it was the Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies, basically from the minute the bubble was announced. And I mean, to see that they're not even trying to exploit the fact that the rules of the bubble are kind of leaned in their favor almost. Yeah,
I
I
remember like
can't
one
say
of
I'm
the
happy
first
about it.
I remember one of the first podcasts we talked about it, and I was like, I was angry that they let the 22 teams come, and there were reports that like, oh, the NBA just like wants their ratings to go up with the Zion versus LeBron first round matchup, and it's like, well, where the heck did that go? Like all the hype was around it, and nothing came from it.
Well, I'll
Like,
tell you one thing that does have hype in the Western Conference. This is a Western Conference episode, so we gotta basically cap it off with the most hype part of the conference matchups. The 3 through 7 seed is the biggest dogfight I have ever seen in the NBA since maybe like what, the 90s, and that's maybe pushing it considering how ridiculous this is. And this is a year without the Golden State Warriors, which means 2021 is going to look vicious. But let's focus on this season right now. Currently, looking at the state of the playoffs picture in the West, it's the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Jazz, the Thunder, and the Mavericks. These are the teams that we don't know where the hell they're going to end up at, and it's really a coin toss in terms of which seed they get. And to a certain extent, let's be honest, Jake, it doesn't really matter what seed they get because home court advantage doesn't really matter when you're in the bubble. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It doesn't change the situation. There's no travel involved. You're just getting seeded. All that's really affected is the first round matchup. I think that's the one that I feel like that's the one that everybody's worried about. Let's start with vying for the 3 seed because I feel like that is probably single-handedly the most important position to get in this entire playoffs, personally. I feel like that's going to determine a lot of who gets where and how many times you have to go through the LA teams and who can actually match up with said LA teams. Looking at the playoff picture right now, the teams that will be vying for that spot more than likely, based on how I feel, is going to be between the Nuggets, who already sit there, and the Rockets, who are, I would say, at least a game behind. If you had to pick out of those two teams, who locks up the 3 seed, who's it go to?
I think it's really up to Denver because if you look at the bottom, like we still don't know who's going to be the 8 seed, but that doesn't matter in this case because they're automatically going to be playing the Lakers. They just have to win one more game to lock up the 1 seed. I'm going to go far enough and say that Dallas has locked in the 7 seed.
Okay.
And I think that, I mean, they're 0-2. Like you said, they lost to the Suns and then they lost in overtime to the Rockets. So I'm thinking that they're going to have to play the Clippers. So it really comes down to the 3 through 6 for me.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be like a strategic battle. I think teams are going to have the capability to win, but I think it's going to depend on what the other teams are doing. Like if the Thunder start losing, I'd rather play the Thunder in the first round than the Rockets or the Jazz. So if the Thunder slide down to that 6 seed and I'm Denver, I'm saying, okay, I'm playing to win. I want to keep this spot. Whereas the Rockets are going to try to want to move up. So I think it's Denver. Denver has control of the 3 seed. I just don't know whether they're going to want to keep it or are they going to want to try to maybe tank a couple games, move down to that 4 seed if they think that that Oklahoma City is going to move up or stay at the 5 seed. So I really think it depends. I mean, I don't know, man. It's complicated because there's so many different outcomes that could come up over the next couple games. Like right now, as we sit here on this podcast, Denver is playing Oklahoma City. Like that game
And they're
has serious
down.
implications. It has serious implications. If Denver wins, they are closer to controlling that 3 seed and controlling their first round matchup. If they lose, you see the Rockets getting closer to the 3 seed, Oklahoma getting closer. And so I don't know. It's just gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out.
Well, I think to play off of your point about it being strategic, right? I think the way to look at it is that no matter what, I feel as though the first round is going to be difficult for no matter what team gets lined up. I think that the Grizzlies are a tougher out than people make it seem in terms of that first round matchup with the Lakers, specifically because their guard play is horrible in terms of talking about the Lakers. Their guard play is relatively atrocious. I mean, like I feel like I could say that with some bass in my voice and not, be concerned about the feedback from it. I mean, the Lakers struggle at the backcourt spot.
As bad as it is, I think it was their starting point guard and shooting guard were Rajon Rondo and Avery Bradley.
Yeah.
Both guys who used to be very good players, but who are now a bit older, a bit slower. They're without those guys. Like they basically have a second string point guard and shooting guard
Yeah.
who, if healthy, would have been on the bench. And you're asking them to potentially go up against Ja or Dame and CJ. I don't see I'm interested to see what happens there.
And then, I mean, going back to our initial focus on the 3 through 7, I think it's a dogfight regardless. And I honestly think that the odd man out in this is the Jazz because, I mean, they currently sit at 5 right now as we're speaking. This is the 3rd of August that we're talking about this. So don't add anybody. But they currently sit in the 5th spot as of the 3rd of August. And I don't see a matchup I like. I don't. If the playoffs started today, they play the Rockets. The Rockets, from a small ball standpoint, have kind of been getting abused by big men so far in this bubble. I mean, Brook Lopez from Milwaukee, 8 against them, even though the Rockets did win the game. In their game against the Mavs, I mean, that was not a very nice game in terms of having to deal with Kristaps Porzingis all night. But these are two games that they came out on top. These are games that, despite the lack of height, I guess you could say, against their teams, they still came out. James Harden played defense on Giannis Antetokounmpo and helped seal the game against Milwaukee. I know everybody hates, even trying to give James Harden props for for defense, considering his offensive, stance in the league. I mean, he literally leads the league in scoring right now. But he's playing defense. He's been playing defense. And I don't see anybody in the backcourt of the Jazz that can hang. Let's flip the script. Say the Nuggets bump down to 4. I like Jokic against Rudy. I mean, I'm not sure how many people may think the same when we're talking about a shot blocker. But personally, I think with Jokic's ability to pull the ball out, play from the top, and he's a decision maker, he's going to make Rudy uncomfortable the entire series. I don't like those circumstances for them. Say we put an entirely different situation and look at it the opposite way. Say there's no significant drops and we have to look at it, or say there's no significant drops from the Jazz and they propel up. Say somehow, with the fact that they're only about a game or two behind the 3 seed, that they shoot up to the 3 and the Thunder stay in the 6 spot. I still don't even like that matchup for them personally, because I feel as though Chris Paul's going to have a series. I know that he has a history of getting hurt when the lights get brightest, and it's kind of unfortunate. But this is a team that he's been able to thrive on. He has 2 other guards in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Dennis Schroeder, who Dennis Schroeder actually just left the bubble as of when we're speaking about this, but should be able to come back within the time that the playoffs start, or within the first series of the playoffs. He has other guys to give the ball to. Danilo Gallinari is slept on as a scorer. Basically scores 20 points at every stop he's made, with his best stop outside of Denver, where he started, being with your Clippers, dropping dang near 25 points a game. I don't think anybody should sleep on Steven Adams either.
Yeah, and they look clean. Like, they
definitely
make it look easy. Like, shout out to Billy Donovan for coaching up a group of guys. He just recently won Coach of the Year today. And like that was announced, him and Mike Budenholzer, who I'm not too keen on for winning the award over Nick Nurse, but that's for a different time.
Yes, sir.
But you just look at the Thunder. They're going to surprise some people, I think. I know I've kind of been beating them down over the past couple podcasts, but like I'm starting to have a minor change of heart on them. I think that they play a brand of basketball kind of like that reminds me of the Raptors. They're not as good. Obviously, the Raptors are going crazy right now. But they're just a team with no stars. You can make an argument for Chris Paul. He's like 37 or 38 or something. He's not at a star performance right now. They just play fundamental basketball. They got guys that know how to work with each other. They know what their strengths are. No one is trying to take control of the team and be that guy they all want. Like, they're all working together. I think they could give a tough first round matchup to the Nuggets, honestly. Steven Adams, I don't think is as good as Jokic. I would hope you agree with me on that one.
I do.
But even Denver, like, they're banged up right now. Like, Jamal Murray today, it came out, he said he has a hamstring injury that he doesn't know how he got it. He literally has a hamstring injury that they can't say this is definitively when he got it. So there hasn't been that much public light on that. I don't know how long he'll be out, but if he misses more time and he doesn't get to build up that chemistry again, I think Denver could be in trouble.
I mean, honestly, I think Denver has the most to lose because they're the team that sits in the third spot with the keys to the castle. They blow this game against the Thunder, which I actually anticipate they do. I'm going to just hindsight 2020 it because by the time this drops, we'll already know. I think they have the most to lose. I personally feel like if the Mavericks can snap into it, they're the team that should scare everybody. They're the team that we've never seen in the playoffs. Kristaps hasn't even sniffed the playoffs playing with the Knicks. Luka just screams big boy basketball to me. Seth Curry has performed on grand stages back in his short time with the Trailblazers last year with the Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors. I mean, they got a squad. I mean, it's not a lot of crazy names. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not somebody that's gonna like make you go, "Oh my goodness, man, they got a crazy 20-point scorer just sitting on the backcourt behind Luka." No, I mean, Tim Hardaway is a solid scoring guard. Jalen Brunson is a very fundamental guard that plays very well alongside Luka Doncic in terms of being able to help facilitate the offense. Maxi Kleber is a guy who I feel like doesn't get a lot of recognition, but as a rim runner is a very athletic dude who gets them buckets. JJ Barea is like 100 for considering how we basically seen him what felt like almost the entire time Dirk was in the league. It felt like anytime we saw Dirk Nowitzki on that team, we saw JJ Barea somewhere right behind him. He's an older player, but he showed out. He's balled out as a small guard. He's balled out in the playoffs in the past. They have a squad, not to mention their coach is Rick Carlisle, which cannot be slept on at all. I feel like they're the team that could scare everybody the most.
See, I'm not as keen on the Mavs simply because I think they're a lock for the 7 seed, and I don't see the Clippers letting up on the 2 seed. They do. I think the Clippers play the Mavericks on Thursday, so by the time this video drops, this what I'm about to say could be totally different. But the Mavericks have not looked good against the Clippers this year. They're 0-2. They've lost by like 15 points, and then I think like 5 points, which was a closer game. But that was also before the trade deadline. The Clippers got better at the deadline. They got Marcus Morris, and they barely gave anything up. They gave up like Mo Harkless. The Clippers got better at the deadline, whether you like Marcus Morris or not. He gets a
Definitely.
lot of hate because of his poor performances against the Lakers this season, but he is a solid guy. He was averaging 19 points per game as the leading scorer on the Knicks. And so people gave him a lot of hate when he didn't go out and put up 19 points because he was like the number 3 or 4 option for the Clippers. Um, I don't see how the I see the Mavericks really struggling against the Clippers if that is indeed the first round matchup.
And that definitely could be difficult. So to end the podcast, Jake, I'm gonna end with the Jake hot take of the episode. You are content that the Mavericks will end in the 7th spot, but if it is up to you, strategy taken into place, the remaining schedule of the regular season, in one word, what team are you taking to finish out with the 3rd seed?
I gotta say Nuggets.
Hey man, it's
I think
bold. It's bold.
I think it's too risky for them to try to play the strategy game and try to play down to some opponents if they want to move down, just because the race is so close between the 3 and 7 seed that I don't like it could change in a matter of hours where it's the Nuggets that purposely lose, and then a couple hours later the Thunder play and win, and boom, all of a sudden you have a Thunder versus Oklahoma City matchup, or Thunder versus Nuggets matchup in the first round. I think it's too risky for them to play the waiting game. I just think they got to try to grab the best seed they can get.
Well, I'm going to take Houston. This has been an excellent, I didn't know it was going to be this, but now I realize this has been an excellent Western Conference I guess, overview of the first weekend/week of basketball. Another great episode in the books, Jake. Shout out to you for bringing the heat, the takes, all of the above. Our question of the day to everybody is, who do you think is going to lock up the 3 seed in the Western Conference? Leave it in the comments below. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to us today. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace.